All right, folks, welcome. My name is Mike. I'm one of the co-founders of this platform, and welcome to Orientation. I'm excited to tell you all about what we're up to here, including our mission and our strategy, the impact COVID-19 is having on that strategy, our timeline, building your team. Let's get some of the policies and commitments out of the way, talk about the culture, and then we'll make some room for some discussion and questions and tell you how to get your questions answered. And so on that note, let me tell you about a little country you may have heard of called the United States, and a little miracle it went through last century where we went from less than 1% of the world's GDP to a third of the world's GDP in just over a single century. And so a lot of people don't quite understand how this happened. And the answer is simple math. Imagine if all of us watching this right now formed an economy, and I bought something from Joe, and Joe took the money and bought something from Sally, and Sally took her share and bought something from Henry. And while we're doing all that, a guy named Brian is sitting around and basically skimming off the top off those transactions, just taking a little bit for himself. What would happen is ultimately that economy couldn't grow, right? And that's what was happening in every country around the world where the elites had figured out how to skim off the top for themselves. You basically had to pay some taxes for the knights and the king and the lords and what have you. And we even had that problem here in the US, of course. And so we went to war against England. We won that. And thanks to these two big oceans that were surrounding us, this little country was able to start to grow its economy, and it had no lords, no knights, no kings to collect taxes for. And so eventually when we started to collect taxes, we ended up spending all of it on the people in ways that helped them make more money. So roads and transportation, so commerce could happen, right? More quickly and more efficiently. Defense, to protect ourselves and our economy against invaders. Education, so we could teach our young people how to become productive members of the economy that was forming. And so we did all that. We spent that money, so people made more money, and so we collected even more taxes and spent that back on the people in ways that helped them make more money. So they made more money, so we collected more taxes, right? Rinse and repeat. And in that single century, that miracle happened, and the rest of the world has spent the last century and a half trying to figure out how to unravel their elites and try to make it so they could do the same thing. Economists call this inclusivity as opposed to extraction. So it's called an inclusive economy as opposed to an extractive economy where someone's basically skimming off the top, keeping that economy from really taking off. And so the result of all that was, in the US, the percent of income and wealth going to the top 1% kept shrinking very nicely. And then along came this thing called the internet that all of a sudden allowed anyone with some technical skills and a lot of money to rapidly monopolize global industries. If you look at today, we've got a company like Uber and Lyft. These two companies are basically monopolizing the entire global taxi business, right? When was that possible prior to the internet and apps? Or you have Google basically monopolizing access to information and advertising, or Facebook with communications. Or look at how Amazon is, in essence, monopolizing consumer commerce around the world, pushing millions and millions of shops and stores out of business, right? And so what's the problem with that? The problem is that a couple things. One, what's happening is all of the wealth is going to a small number of people. It's creating at the top of each of those platforms a billionaire or two, usually the founders, a bunch of millionaire investors, a few thousand employees, generally tech workers that are doing pretty well, and then millions and millions of people that are now earning from these platforms. Remember, these platforms are becoming economies unto themselves. You think of Uber, there's a lot of people earning, millions of drivers earning. Amazon has millions of employees and millions of mom and pop shops selling stuff into Amazon, right? So they're economies unto themselves. And so with all these people earning in these economies, and and the fact that they're Wall Street funded, all of them, meaning, what does that mean? That means, what does Wall Street want? It wants profits, right? Every quarter it wants to see growing profits. And so a profit in an economy by definition is an extraction, right? Because profits are revenue minus costs. Now, that means try to collect as much revenue as you can, but specifically don't spend as much as possible on all the people that are trying to earn from it, right? Pay them as little as possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a profit. And so this problem where you have all these economies forming and monopolizing industries, and they're Wall Street funded, so they have to extract. And as more and more of us become workers within these platforms, where we're generating revenue from these platforms, you've got a real problem coming. And in democracies, when inequality rises like that and continues to rise, eventually, of course, people will rise up to shake up the system. And so I wrote about this in a book a few years back before you started to see what is now becoming very apparent to economists, which is these populist movements around the world. If you look at our own country, a few years ago, we elected a president that the people that voted for him said wanted to shake up the system. You're seeing the same thing from Brazil to Italy, to all over the world, these populist movements. And I submit for your consideration, what's causing that is growing inequality. And when we are feeling economically insecure, we tend to want, be open to anyone that'll give us hope. And so it becomes very easy for someone to give us hope by sometimes making promises they have no way to deliver on, just to, get our vote. And so in democracies, we give that person the vote, and sometimes then bad things can happen. And so we've got a real problem happening here. And so we saw this happening a couple decades ago, and that's why we started to build this platform. And the main difficulty with this platform was doing it without investor capital, so that should we succeed, should we start to get our economy that we're building here to grow and collect revenues, we can spend all of it back on all the people earning from it. And so we're uniquely the only company on the platform to have fully built the social network, tightly integrated with the marketplace, all on top of a cryptocurrency, all with crowdsourced workers doing over 100 different tasks, from the software development to customer service to the educating to all the moderation and dispute management in the marketplace. Everything that has to happen is now 100% operated by algorithms with people. Just think of Uber. It didn't go out and hire millions of drivers. It launched algorithms that allow people to download the app, basically hire themselves, promote themselves by getting great ratings, fire themselves or demote themselves by treating customers poorly and getting lower ratings, right? So all of that's being handled by software. And so we built all the software to do that. And it turns out that because we're the first to build all of that, there's something else that we can attack as well. And that's the other problem facing humanity right now, which is the climate crisis, where because of all of these platforms needing to constantly drive more and more revenue and profits, we are extracting as much as we can out of the earth for the purposes of manufacturing things. And it turns out most of these things will hardly end up getting used. And so because we've got this whole platform and the logistics between software and algorithms and humans, we can enable what we're calling the sharing of everything, or everything fast and free. And we'll get into that in a moment. But the purpose of that is to reduce the need to manufacture millions of things daily that'll hardly be used. And so let me just sort of summarize the problem. So the internet has enabled monopolization of global industries that are now becoming economies that people earn from. All of these are funded by Wall Street, which cares, of course, about one thing: growing profits. Now, profits in any economy means extractions away from the economy, away from the people earning from them, which means you're going to have income inequality, and growing inequality in democracies means people rising up to bring down the system. And so that is the issue that we're trying to that's why we're here, to fight that problem. That's our mission. And to summarize the summary, these forces behind that red line, the internet and technology coupled with Wall Street, these forces are not going away. And so unless something corrects it, it spells the end of democracy as we know it. So you might say, okay, no big deal. We'll get it back later, right? Let me remind you that just last century, humanity gave up 100 million lives, mostly of young men, in the pursuit of democracy, right? Fighting other systems like communism and fascism in order to have freedom. So once these things go away, once democracy is dismantled piece by piece, it's not easy to get it back. It becomes really hard to get it back. And if you don't believe this is happening, look at many countries around the world and how these populist people are being put in place and how they're attacking the free press, how they're attacking the democratic institutions. And because that red line is continuing, it's not slowing down, we've got a big problem on our hands. And so how do we attack income inequality and the climate crisis? The answer is, let's start by giving small businesses and consumers some much better choices that benefit them in the short term. Look, we're not going to go out there and give them, instead of plastic bags, we're going to give them bags made out of straw, brought down on the back of a camel from the Himalayas, right? And say, you must use this. No, we're going to give them some choices that benefit them in the short term. So let's talk about how we help local merchants, first of all. We're going to help them fight back against Wall Street and against Amazon. The way we're going to do that first, as I mentioned, we're going to go out to local merchants and ask them to provide a student discount to the college students that we're bringing into the platform. Give us a student discount in exchange for promoting them for free all over the platform. Then we're going to introduce them to one-click advertising so they can start advertising themselves without doing what they currently have to do on a Google or a Facebook, which is have content, create ads, monitor those ads, optimize the ads. It's too much for a small business. The next thing we're going to do is integrate them into our platform so consumers can buy from them with one click. Isn't this what put Amazon on the map? The convenience of being able to click, one click and buy things and have it shipped to you. So we're going to do that. And so now these merchants will be able to start competing with an Amazon because the consumers they're serving will be able to buy from them with one click. I would argue they got a little bit of a leg up there because these same students, as you'll find out in a second, that will be in our platform, are earning from our platform. So they've got money that they can spend with these merchants with one click, which they won't be able to as easily spend elsewhere, say on Amazon. And so students are going to be naturally attracted to buying from them now once we make it that convenient. And I'll remind you that we're going to open up to non-students very, very soon. So this is not intended to be just focused on the college market for long. Then the next thing we're going to do is offer these merchants 1 hour delivery to the consumer. So the other thing that put Amazon on the map is the ability for you and I to have things delivered to us in 2 days or less if we spend $100 on Amazon Prime each year, right? So what we're going to do is offer these students 1 hour delivery for free from these merchants. So now think about the mindset of the consumer saying, I could buy from Amazon or I could buy from this platform. Well, if I buy from Amazon, I'll get it in 2 days at full price. If I buy it here from this local merchant, I get it in 1 hour for free. I get to, it's convenient, one-click purchasing, and I get a discount from these merchants as well. And by the way, if I ever have to return it, the merchant's right there locally. I don't have to figure out the boxing and all that, which is always a pain to return something. And so all of a sudden, from a convenience perspective, these merchants can fight back now and sustain themselves. But it doesn't end there. The final piece is we're going to hook these merchants into our everything fast and free, or the sharing of everything model. What that means is that a business that has lawnmowers, let's say, can now, instead of buy a lawnmower and sell it for a 30%, say, markup, can buy that lawnmower and rent it over and over and over again with us taking care of all of the logistics that it takes for them to do that. So near unlimited potential, upside profits for them, but also a high level of defensibility because it's very hard for an Amazon or a Walmart to do that at the local level and compete with these mom and pops in every category you can imagine. You can imagine. And so that's what it does for merchants. But on the consumer side, we're talking about abundance, right? Just think about the very definition of the word inequality or poverty. If everything you might want or need could be in your hands fast in less than an hour for virtually free. And by that, I mean for doing the things that you're used to doing for free, which is posting and sharing. A couple billion people do that worldwide for free. Now we're going to pay them to do that, and they can use those earnings to tap into this. So abundance for consumers, also saving them at millions of local merchants around the world, but it doesn't end there. We want them to earn. As I mentioned, we'll be paying all of our users for posting and sharing. And that ramps up to nearly $1,000 a month. And so, but it doesn't end there. We want them to earn in our inclusive economy. You remember what that word inclusive? We talked about, what happened when the U.S. was that first example of collecting revenues, but then spending it all on the people without having to scrape off the top. That's what I mean by inclusive as opposed to extractive economy. I'm talking about the ability to sell or share products and services very easily for any consumer to be able to do that. Crowdsource work, so millions of jobs within the platform where they get to work from home, from wherever they like, and have, sort of return to family first values. Listen, when you don't have to commute to work every day and say at 2 p.m. if you want to pick up your kid and that's important, you get to do that when you work for yourself on a platform like this. And so just think about the typical American spends 1 hour a day commuting. What they could do with that extra 5 hours a week. Just imagine 5 extra hours to spend with your kids. It's a game changer as it pertains to family. And so, and finally, all of that done within a new constitution, a new democratic framework that one of our political scientists from Yale, a professor from Yale, calls Democracy 3.0. Democracy 1.0, of course, being Greece, the birthplace of democracy. Democracy 2.0 was the US, this sort of example of exclusivity that's really been this shiny beacon of light for the last century or so until recently, and with the extractive economics that's now occurring, one of the reasons being the internet, as we talked about, and a constitution being redesigned for today. I think our founding fathers did a great job for a bunch of guys sitting around in the 1700s, right, and kind of putting down something that worked pretty well for a couple centuries. But like all things in life, over time, if you can sort of recreate something with hindsight, you're going to make some improvements. What's an example of an improvement? How about a term limit for politicians? So think about this. In our president, we've got a term limit, right? Our president gets to be elected once and have 2 terms, and then he or she is out. But the president can't get a lot done by himself or herself. He or she also needs Congress and the Senate, right? For example, for budgetary things. Otherwise, he or she is like a sitting duck. Now, our senators and congressmen and women have no term limits. They can stay there as long as they want. So what happens over time is they find their permanent funding sources. And those permanent funding sources give them the money they need to spend on advertising, on TV ads, when elections happen, to badmouth their competitors and pretty much make sure that they win. It's very hard to compete with someone that has a lot of money to spend on advertising. So in effect, what that means is those elections don't really matter anymore. The people are not in control. You don't believe me? Check this out. About 90% of Americans don't believe in Senate and in the Senate and the Congress. However, 90% of senators and congressmen and women are reelected. Or how about this example? 90% of Americans think crazy people shouldn't have guns. 90%, right? However, Congress and Senate won't touch it. Why is that? Because they're looking to their funding sources now. That's who they really need, not the people. And so the idea that this is still a democracy is it's just not true. It's a farce. A democracy is what they call a peaceful revolution. JFK said those who make peaceful revolutions, in other words, true elections, impossible, make violent revolution inevitable. And if you don't believe me, look at what's going on outside your window. Outside my window, all the businesses are boarded up. Why do you think that is, right? You know what's going on outside. People are getting fed up by a lack of progress. A government can't progress if it can't decide things. If the people are not in charge and a small number of funding sources are really in charge, and this is why nothing happens anymore in our country. And so this will continue, right? These issues that we're facing around the world will continue because that red line will continue, because technology will continue to make it easier to monopolize global industries, and those companies are all going to be funded by Wall Street, and that requires profits, right? And so this extractive economics is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to build the world's largest and most inclusive economy with a new democratic framework designed with the benefit of hindsight from the great democratic experiments of the last few centuries. We're basically trying to do for the internet what the US did for the world, and see our own share of global GDP rise in the same way you saw that happen in the US a couple centuries ago. How do we make this happen? Simple math. Take away the skimming off the top, right? Inclusivity. Listen, it's taken us 2 decades to build this platform through some very, very difficult times. The team stuck together for one reason. This, what you're seeing right here, that red line, and knowing that if not us, then who? And so I'm so glad to have you here with us. So glad you've decided to jump in with us and fight with us, because we've got one piece left to this jigsaw puzzle, and that is, how do we get big fast, right? And so let's talk about our strategy, which is to rapidly go after the college market by securing student discounts from local merchants, and then open that platform to everyone else. And we want to do that later this year. So let's just hop in very quickly and take a look at what's happening with COVID-19. So small businesses are reporting that many of them will be out of business here within just a few months if they don't get back, if they don't get their revenues back to where they were. And there's no sense right now that that might happen. So just imagine reaching out to local merchants right now with an advertising promise that costs zero. No one approaches them like that, right? In exchange for a student discount. Just imagine the appetite they might have now because of this, right? Because they don't have an ad budget right now. And then the other thing we need to do is we're going to reach out to students and get them involved with us to go out and sign up these local merchants. Well, guess what, folks? We're facing a record unemployment that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. And if you actually dig in a little deeper, what you'll find is actually people that are earning less than $40,000 a year that are the most affected. In fact, 40%, almost half of people earning less than $40,000 a year have lost their jobs. And guess who that is? College students, right? And so the impact of COVID-19 ultimately is an opportunity for us like we'll probably never again see in our lifetimes to help a world of people and businesses that are hurting, accessible, right? If they can talk, even if a merchant's shut down, they can speak to you over the phone and Zoom, and are ready to be helped, right? And maybe even generate some great personal fortunes in doing so. And so let's talk about how we're going to do this. So the first step when you get involved is start thinking about building your team. If you are a division manager, you start thinking about building your team. But very, very quickly and simultaneously, we get started activating our first 25 merchants. So you're going to sign up and activate the first 25 merchants and rapidly go into the next phase, which is has to do with recruiting students. And what we're doing is we're basically looking for students that are looking to make money. They're looking for a job. And we're presenting our opportunity to them, saying, listen, come here and help us make money. What we want you to do is go out and help us sign up merchants. And if they're interested in that, fantastic. And if they're not interested in that, no problem. Here's an account on the system, and it comes with $100 built in for you to go spend in terms of discounts at these local merchants, that 25 of which we've already signed up. And of course, the students that take on the opportunity will be signing up a whole lot more. And so that becomes a big part of the focus, is just looking for students that are looking for opportunities and helping them, guiding them, managing them as they go out and work with merchants. And if they're not interested, if you're not interested in them, giving them an account on the system, say, here's $100, go spend it at the local merchant. So in essence, what's happening is you're getting the flow of new merchants coming in to go up, and you're getting the flow of students shopping at these merchants to go up. So you're basically bringing this ecosystem alive. And then as you do that, some of your students that come in are going to prove to you that they're mature, they're technically savvy, they're people that you would want to put in front of the merchants. And so you teach them how to do that. You teach them how to go talk to the merchants and say, listen, here's how you slide this thing over and you get more advertising. It's that simple. We've made it that simple, so a college student with no experience can do that. And college students are a joy to work with, by the way. They're open-minded. Unlike many of us, they're not jaded with the world yet. They care about big movements like what we're doing here. It turns out they really care about the climate crisis, and they really care about income inequality. If you don't believe me, just a few months back, you had this gentleman named Bernie Sanders out there, attracting college students more than anyone else. And those were the two things he was talking about: income inequality and the climate crisis, right? And so they're just a joy to work with because they're optimistic and full of energy, right? So you're going to teach them how to do this. Then we're going to digitize these merchants. The college students are going to do that, and prepare them for one-click purchasing and 1 hour delivery by consumers. Then we're going to open up that platform to everyone else, the non-students and the merchants that are not just interested in students in your area. And then we're going to expand your territory and go do it again. All of these steps will be done with college students. And so the really all you need to do is sign up those first 25 merchants, which we'll train you to do. And it's like handing out candy to a kid, because you're giving them something that they really, really need, new customers and revenue for no cost. And no one's doing that with them. So you stand out like a sore thumb. So we're going to drill down a little bit into the opportunity. So the opportunity for district managers is truly amazing. For division managers, it's even more amazing because you get a cut of all the district managers that report to you. And you can also earn like a zone manager. And how you do that, by the way, is when you bring on other people, when you introduce this to your friends, and if they come in as division managers, you'll earn as if you are their zone manager, even though they, probably report to another zone manager. You'll earn from them. And of course, you pay no zone manager fee or anything like that. So it's an automatic way to tell your friends about this. And if they're overqualified to be reporting to you, say as a district manager, you don't have to worry about that, because you're going to earn a percent of what they earn no matter where in the organization they go. And so that's why it's an ongoing phase to just build your team, bring people in, and not worry so much if they report to you, if they report to someone else, because either way you're going to earn as if they report to you. And if you want to learn more about some steps, some tips on how to do that, maybe a message just to use on LinkedIn if you're reaching out to contacts and what have you, it's you can find that at getstarted.college. But the approach is easy. Reach out to people to catch up. Tell them to go check out this opportunity at movement.college, and the opportunity parts at positions.college. Answer any questions they might have and invite them to a call. With myself, I do a call every day at 5 p.m. Eastern, and then they can secure their spot. Again, instructions for that are at getstarted.college. But this is how we were able to grow so quickly, is people telling their friends about the opportunity and earning consistently from all the folks that they introduced to it, regardless of whether they ended up reporting to them or not. Okay, so let's get some of the policies and rules out of the way. So these twice weekly calls are the major way we communicate. So I'm talking about the team meetings. If you miss any of those, you may be missing important information. So you really want to be there. Otherwise, you might go a month or two before you figure out something's changed and you had no idea about that. We have got an ability to move very quickly because of a trusting relationship we have with each other. And we don't have to get lawyers involved, for example, every time we change something. But with that comes this zero tolerance approach to unprofessionalism or cheating. And so we're basically have an agreement with each other, all of us, that look, we're going to move fast together. But if anyone decides they find a way to cheat the system somewhere and does that, or is unprofessional, infighting with a customer or a merchant, they're automatically out. And this is important for you, because if those couple of bad seeds that inevitably show up are going to be damaging the brand that you're building. So they're hurting your work. And so we're not going to allow that to happen. And so that's why we have that policy. Look, this is your business, right? You can sell this business as you grow. This is your business. You are responsible. You will have difficulties and obstacles, and you're going to solve those like you do in any other business. We're going to do our best to help, as you'll see in a second. You'll also have expenses, right, as they come up. Now, you shouldn't really have a lot of expenses, because this is a business that, we've generated this platform. We built this platform to make it easy for you to run your business from anywhere. You don't need an office. If you want to have one, you can. You're free to. But for the most part, you don't have a lot of expenses. For the merchants, you've got some consumables, a window sticker, a counter display that can add up to a couple bucks, $2 to $3. Although you'll generate more than that just from signing up those merchants as soon as they get a few transactions, as you'll see in a second. But for the most part, you don't really have a lot of expenses, but you'll have some. Our commitment is to always doing our best to support you, including flexibility. Listen, as we go forward together, we're going to face some obstacles. What if one or two of these revenue streams don't pan out like we want to? I doubt we're going to say to you, sorry, tough luck. That was our deal, right? We've got 4 big revenue streams within the platform outside of the sales and marketing channel that we can share with you, right? And so we're going to bend over backwards to make sure we accommodate you. Our request is do the same. Sometimes maybe something has to happen to benefit the mission that may not immediately benefit you in the short term personally. So there might be some of those things, those decisions. We won't make them lightly. We won't make them without consultation with you and your leaders. And I say your leaders, and I definitely mean your leaders. You get to choose your leaders in this organization. If you don't like the person you report to, switch, report to someone else. You're totally free to do that. You're in control. We want to help with the activation of the merchants. I'm specifically talking about paying the students for signing up merchants. When a student gets out there, signs up a merchant, as soon as that merchant has 5 unique transactors, so 5 transactions from 5 different people, the revenue is released to them, $20 to the core rep, that's the student, $4 to the person who manages that student, 1 person to the person who manages that person, and 50 cents to the person that manages that person. So it adds up to just over $25. We want to be accessible and accountable to you. The way we do that, as I mentioned, team calls twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. I might have misspoken earlier about the time. This is the correct time. The Monday now is being taken over by your zone managers. So keep an eye on that and look for guidance from them on the final times, because they might change by the time you watch this. We're going to help you build your team. I mentioned that we do calls daily at 5 p.m. Eastern to help you with your recruits if they've got questions or they're confused. It is a complex platform and a complex story. And so I want to be there personally for you. Email support between those calls. And when you need something quickly, live chat support. All right, folks, let's talk about this point. That is, we're going up against some big, really big competitors. And I hope you'll give me this much. When we started this, the idea of going up against some big tech companies, we're talking about multi-hundred-billion-dollar companies, and not raise money from investors was probably an insane, ludicrous idea, right? And guess what? We beat them to the punch. Facebook's been trying to launch cryptocurrency for 2 years now, and forget about integrating it into the marketplace and doing all the crowdsource stuff. They haven't even started that stuff yet. So how is it that we're able to move faster than them? Well, I'll tell you what it was. We had a secret weapon. And it was that secret weapon that gave us confidence that, you know what? I think we could do this. I think we can pull this off and build this faster than they can without a single penny from investors. What was that secret weapon? What do you think it was? Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was culture, right? Culture is the way a team works together. It's some unspoken rules, sometimes spoken, that make it so that team can be more efficient and can move more quickly in some ways. I'm going to get into that right now. But I'll tell you this. We don't get a second chance to build an optimal culture that gives us an edge over all competitors, that allows us to move faster, innovate faster, and win. In fact, we used to have required reading. It's not required anymore, but if you want to pick up this book, it's very interesting. It's called Built to Last. Many of you have probably heard of it. And basically what this company talks about are, companies that have strong cultures, it calls them visionary companies, can move and last longer than other companies, they claim. And you could say some of that's subjective. Well, the one thing that wasn't subjective in their research was the price of the stock prices for companies that had strong cultures, as depicted by that pink line. And they compared that to similar companies in the same vertical, in the same space, for comparison. And those were the yellow companies. And as you can see, those yellow companies were not weak companies. They did twice as good as the general market. So they didn't go out there and find companies that, that did poorly. So for example, in the aerospace, they compared Boeing to McDonnell Douglas. Boeing had a very strong culture. McDonnell Douglas didn't. Or IBM versus NCR. IBM had a strong culture. NCR didn't when they were at the same level. And over time, look at the difference of what happened. And so what the book will say to you, I'll summarize it. Some of the 5 mechanisms they talk about is, one, the company must have a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's called a BHAG, right? And as I think you'll agree that what we're trying to do here is big and hairy and audacious, right? Our mission is to empower people by enabling opportunity. That means giving them ways to make money. Hope, which is a state of mind that you need to progress in life. If you don't have hope, you could get hit in the head with a bar of gold and just say, well, what is that? That looks heavy. Why the hell would I want? It's too shiny. It's hurting my eyes, right? It's hope that gives you the mindset to get up in the morning and work for a better future. And influence, which is the power to act on the things that matter to your life. And I'm specifically, in this case, talking about political influence and the fact that we're a democratic organization whose president of the whole organization is elected by the users, right? So the users have a say in the platform. So that's our mission statement. But wait a minute, that's not a goal. That's what we want to accomplish, but it's not a real goal, right? So let's talk about our overarching goal, which is to help half the world's population that's currently generating. Half the world's population today lives on $2 or less per day, right? We want to help them earn at least $25 a day by 5 years from now. So that's our big, hairy, audacious goal. Imagine what that does for a family that goes from $2 to $4 or $6 or $8 or $10. Now imagine what happens to that family's opportunities when they reach $25 a day. It's a game changer for them, right? And we can do that by building everything it takes to host an economy and deliver it to every corner of the world. So anyone out there with either a cheap mobile phone or an internet-connected computer or the ability to move their body to a local internet cafe can access our economy and be part of it and start generating revenue and doing everything they need to succeed. So that's the first thing that book talks about. The second thing it talks about, to be one of those visionary companies, is to have a cult-like culture. And it talks about having a strong culture. And that means you want to select people for your team that fit the culture and deflect people from joining your team that aren't a good fit. You want to use the opportunity to talk about our core values every chance you get. And we've got just 4 core values. So it's not hard to know what they are, and I'll get into them in a second. But the key here is repetition is the mother of success. Repeat yourself, repeat yourself, repeat yourself until those things are ingrained in people's minds. And that's how you build a cult-like culture. So again, build your team with folks that best match and agree with the core values, right? And if they don't agree with them, that's okay. They're neither right nor wrong, but you don't want them in your organization, or you're not going to have a strong culture. You're going to have what's called a non-culture, right? The next thing is experiment a lot. Keep what works, get rid of what doesn't. Specifically, I'm talking about celebrating failure, right? Encourage people to take risks and try different things, because all great inventions start with failures. You try things that don't work, and then you take the parts that work and you keep those, and you remove the parts that don't, and you keep working on those until eventually you've got something that works. And so the way you do that culturally in your team and here as an organization is we have to encourage people to step out, take risks, and fail. And when they do that, that's an awesome thing. We got to applaud them. And that encourages people to step up and do those things and tell everyone else what didn't work. And so everyone else gets to know, okay, that didn't work. Let's put our energy into doing something else. And therefore, you're going to get to the wins even faster. Now, compare that to this idea of don't ever take risks so you don't fail, so it's not embarrassing. And then living with a fear of rejection, right? And all those things. Imagine that mindset in a company versus a company that's actually people are looking to fail and try things because they know they're going to get applauded, right? We actually had award ceremonies for who failed the most. And they would get up and talk about all the risk-taking they did, and we'd give them trophies. And so it got embedded into the culture, and that's how we were able to move so fast and get to all of our inventions faster, because we were able to use those failures as stepping stones and accelerate the path to the win. Next, Homegrown management. I'm talking about meritocracy. So notice that our zone managers, that all the division managers report to, were all promoted from within already. This all happened here recently. So we didn't hire or allow someone to come into a zone manager spot from the outside without proving to everyone else that they have what it takes. And so that's a big part of how we operate the organization, including ultimately the president of the entire platform is not put in by shareholders like most companies in order to protect the shareholder interests, i.e. their profits. However, the users vote for the president, and the president's job is to protect their interests. And so that's even at that level how we're doing things. And then finally, never good enough. I'm talking about constant and never-ending improvement. And a big part of that is trying things. If they work or they don't work, provide feedback, taking that feedback, trying again. And that's why I love being on calls with you every week to make sure if you've got something, an idea, or something that you know about, it's not getting somehow blocked by layers of management before it gets to, for example, my ears. And so I mentioned core values. Let's talk about what those 4 core values are. The first one is simply winning. And by that, I mean, we happen to operate in a space where it's more or less winner takes all. It's called the network effect. If you haven't heard of that phrase, look it up on Wikipedia. Network effect. So basically what it means is that the more people that use our platform and come into our economy, the more powerful our economy gets at serving everyone, the more value it has for every person. And so because it has more value for every person, more people will join. And because more people will join, it'll get even more powerful. And so you can see what happens. It becomes very, very difficult to be in second place. And so there won't be a second place. And so more specifically, I'm talking about in your area, set goals, set SMART goals. If you don't know what a SMART goal is, look it up. It stands for 5 things that you might even be able to see on your screen right now. But set goals so that you're driven as opposed to just sort of doing best efforts and hoping everything works out. So that's our first core value. We all need to be reminded that we have to win or all of this is for nothing, right? We'll be pushed out of business completely by competitors because it's a winner takes all approach. It's a network effect, and we're very much a network operated business. And so there won't be a second place after a few years. And so for this to be worth your time, you must win. You must dominate in your area. So the second thing, the second core value is we call it open communication. And by that, I mean, everyone's allowed to say anything to anyone else. This idea of respecting hierarchy is BS in our organization. So if you've got some communication to give someone, you've got some constructive criticism, feel free to do it. And their job is to encourage you to give it to them, even if it's not something that's fun for them to hear, because that's how we'll figure stuff out faster. That's how we'll figure out we're going the wrong way faster. And so some of that takes courage to go to the source. It's easier for me to badmouth Sally behind her back to Joe than to go to Sally directly and talk about an issue or something that we're facing. And so if I go to Joe, Joe's job is to say, whoa, 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 sounds like you have a problem with Sally. Here, let me just get her on the speed dial and put you guys in touch with each other. And basically communicate to me that, Mike, you know, you're being a coward right now. You need to have the courage to go to the source and don't plant negative seeds in my head. Political environments are no fun. They stop innovation. They stop people wanting to come together and work. If you don't like the people that you work with or they don't like you, it's no fun to work with them. And when you like them and they like you and you're having fun, guess what? You're more likely to go into a meeting where the outcome is not necessarily clear and invest the time in there because it's fun to do so. And boom, you might have a breakthrough come out of that meeting. So it starts with having a political environment, a non-political environment, right? And that starts with always going to the source with what you know or issues that you have with someone and speaking up, not being afraid to speak up. Okay, the third core value, WTATA, we say. It stands for where there's a will, there's a way. And it means, you know, don't ever say that's not possible. We believe wholeheartedly that everything is possible. Look, just because we haven't figured out how to do something yet doesn't mean it's not possible. If you believe that it's possible and leave those pathways open, somehow, magically, people, events, situations, circumstances will eventually arise to the rescue and bring you that solution. However, if you say that can't be done, you close that off and you'll never find the solution. And so as we're talking in our meeting or we're brainstorming and somebody brings up an idea that's half cooked, I could jump in there and point out how that can't be done and be the smartest guy in the room for a minute and, give myself a big cheer for being the smartest guy in the room. Or I could ignore that part, the part that doesn't work, and think about if this could be done, how might it be done, and see if I can add to the energy and the flow and the momentum of that meeting by trying to help, that to happen, even though none of us see the way it can be done. Do you see the difference there? All great inventions start as crappy ideas. And through a process of people talking about it and having the right mindset, they get themselves there. So I'm talking about being an optimist, being a person that has their brain in the right place. So I'm saying do what it takes to put your brain in the right place when you get up in the morning before you get on the calls and get to work with all the people that you work with. Listen, I can get up in the morning and be the world's largest pessimist, right? It happens all the time. And so what I do every single morning is I'll go for at least a 3-mile run, followed by a 1-mile swim in the ocean during the summer months or in the swimming pool during the winter. Why? Just to make sure when I go into my meetings, my blood is flowing to my brain. I am much more likely to be a cup half full guy than a cup half empty guy. So what I'm saying is being an optimist is a choice that you have to make, cause and effect, and you have to invest in it. Do what it takes. Exercise is a proven way to get your mind in a good place. Some of it has to do with removing negative energy, people, and things out of your life so you don't have these drains. And sometimes that's really hard to do, as many of you know oh so well. And so do what it takes to put your brain in the right place so that you can be that positive person that's working with that W-ta-ta, right? Where there's a will, there's a way type attitude. And finally, make sure you're having fun and make sure your team is having fun. Listen, over the years, because of these core values and our mission, we were very, very good at bringing lots of people in, mostly engineers, and getting them so motivated that they would work 7 days a week. Just when they went home or on the weekends, they just want to work. And they couldn't stop thinking about work. And ultimately, many of them burned out, right? That what happens to tissue, like your brain, is it gets overused when you care about something too much, and it can atrophy to a point where your only way to survive physically is to quit. And we did that to a lot of people. And so that's why ultimately we added this fourth core value. It turns out when people are having fun, they're less likely to burn out. Fun, when you're having fun, your brain is releasing serotonin, and which also happens to be the chemical needed for breakthrough thinking and solutions. And so making sure everyone's having fun and investing the time to ensure they're having fun is critical. So maybe at the beginning of your calls with your team, why not take 5 minutes to tell some jokes, right? Find your own ways to just inject a small percentage. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be 5%, even 3%, 2% of the time that you focus on having fun. Having fun is serious business if you want to succeed. Otherwise, you're going to burn out and you're going to burn out others, because this mission and everything we're doing is incredibly motivating. Why is it motivating? Because the things that motivate humans, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, are almost all included in there. All the way from money to respect, love, sense of accomplishment, and ultimately purpose, right? What bigger purpose could exist on this planet more than taking care of your family, potentially generating millions of dollars for your family, while attacking the climate crisis, while attacking income inequality and saving democracy? What could possibly give you more of a sense of purpose? And so the danger of that is you can burn yourself out unless you constantly stop. And I mean daily, twice a day, 3 times a day, stop and have a little fun. Give your brain that release so that it can have what it needs to keep fighting. And so the process is always fun. And so those are the 4 core values. Let's choose to be positive, folks. The positive energy is what gets us to the higher clarity and solutions. The opposite is true too. Let's try to cooperate with each other, not compete, right? Which boosts ourselves, our income, our customers, the mission, given its importance to the world, right? So if you're trying things out there and it succeeds or it doesn't succeed, either way, share it with as many people as possible, right? So, and they'll do the same, and we'll be much more likely to succeed, all of us. Listen, we're going to have many remote workers that are working in the field in your area, many of which won't even be in your organization. They might be people that are software developers working on our platform, or marketplace moderators, or customer service people. A ton of people, transporters, right, are going to be working in your area, and they're missing out on some of the things that their friends are getting back at the office, where at 5 p.m. on Friday, they all get to hang out and go to the local bar. So what we want to do is do weekly meetups in your area, including drinking and competitive games. And you're going to need a budget, and you're going to need a staff to help make that all possible. So we want to provide that. We want to provide award ceremonies regionally and nationally for recognition. Now, your leadership is needed. Most of these people in your area are very introverted. That means they're software developers, or others that like to be behind computers, and they're not comfortable around people. So your job is to try to encourage them to come to these events. And when they do, make sure they're having a good time. And when you do that, they're going to come out of their shells, right? Like never before, like you haven't seen, because no one does that for them. And so what we need from you is to be that leader that sets the tone and creates the culture. And just imagine, as a side effect of those things, the competitive advantage of, say, just think about the analogy of, like, if we were Uber and we had a competition named Lyft, and all of our folks got together and had award ceremonies, and they got together every weekend, and little by little culture formed. And the other company, they're just like, here's an app, go make some money, call it a day. How long until the best people from that company start to go to this company, right? Because we don't all care just about money. There's other things that motivate us, like human interaction, like recognition for the hard work you're doing, right? So we have that incredible opportunity to have that differentiation. And I'm here to tell you, as you saw earlier with the pink line from the Built to Last book, it's a game changer. We can dominate against all of our competitors out there if we build that strong culture. And again, we don't get a second chance to do that. And I'm here to tell you folks, it's worth doing, right? This mission we're in together, it's worth doing. Isn't that worth doing? Isn't democracy worth saving? Are you aware of some other company doing something like this that is out there, so we don't, it's not up to us 100% to make this happen, or else? I'm not aware of anyone else building anything like this, right? Anyone that's been able to even try, much less build all this technology without taking a single penny from investors. And the other problem is this, right? What's being done about it? Virtually nothing. We can do something about it, right? So it's worth it. It's worth building that culture. And so on that note, I just want to thank you for being on board with this, for making the decision and taking the plunge. The one thing I can promise you for sure is you'll never get bored. We have a big, big, big responsibility here together to take care of the things we talked about with the mission, but also your family. And so on that note, I just want to thank you again, and we'll talk soon on one of our team calls. Bye-bye.